acknowledge two of my board members, our president, Tim Becker, who's in the back, as well as Director Sheila Young, who's also in the back. And I guess what I've been invited to talk about, and I appreciate the invitation, Susan, is a great project we're working on at Orloma. And it's something that we've done in partnership with a whole bunch of people, the Bay Institute, Save the Bay, UC Berkeley, the National Science Foundation, and a bunch of other folks. But basically it's to examine a potential response to sea level rise, which is something that's in all of our interest. And so I'm not sure if somebody could index the slide, and maybe I can just stand closer to the front. But I want to tell a little bit of the story of just how we got to this point. And maybe you could index the first slide. If you just go arrow key, it should. Basically Orloma's facing a couple different things. I think a lot of things are going right at Orloma. Historically, one of our Achilles heels has been high peaking flows compared to average flows. So when it rains, lots of rainwater goes in and finds defects in the pipes and ends up at our plant. And so where we might see about 12 million gallons per day in a regular day, we'll see 80 million gallons per day during a storm. And so this is something that we've wanted to manage for a long time. And the way that other treatment plants manage this is they build a parking lot for that extra flow. They hold it, wait for the rain to go by, and then bring that flow back into the plant. And we wanted to build one of these on our property for maybe 20 years or so, and have been unable to do it. Another dynamic that's going on in the bay is there's a lot more concern about nutrient loading in the bay. That the amount of ammonia and nitrogen that comes through our treatment plant is basically untreated at this point, goes out into the bay, and hasn't for decades caused any issues, algal blooms or other, we call it eutrophication within the industry. That the enrichment of the water hasn't caused any bad impacts yet. Where the same amount of loading in other estuaries like the Long Island Sound, the Everglades and the Chesapeake have caused very, very large problems. So we anticipate having to do this in the next 10 years or so, and it changes the whole biology of the plant, and it becomes more and more susceptible to these high flows. So anyway, we have an interest in building an equalization basin on our property. That kind of sets some of the stage. Maybe we'll advance to the next slide. This is looking at the treatment plant here. This is our site, and this is where we wanted to build that basin for a long time. And maybe we'll go to the next slide. It's just a little bit closer up, but basically one thing that's a fact about this property is there's a few bits of wetlands, designated wetlands on this property. There's a storm ditch that goes across it. That's jurisdictional waters that are covered by the waters of the U.S. and a couple little places that pond over here, and it's basically precluded us from developing this property for, say, that 25 years. So other work's going on in parallel with our desires, and so maybe go ahead and advance this. And this is the Adapting to Rising Tides effort, as well as the HASCO, which is Hayward Area Shoreline Protection Agency. This is a view of the San Lorenzo coastline. The Orloma plant is up here. In the picture, let's see. You can see the Skywest Golf Course right there in the middle, and you can see there's some yellow lines that project into the San Lorenzo Village, going up into Del Rey, and basically down Bachman Boulevard. And what those are is, with the 16-inch sea rise projections, which are projected about 50 years out, plus high tide and wind action, those are the areas that would be impacted by waves and would be subject to flooding with 16-inch sea rise. So it's something that's of concern to us and to the community, sea rise in general. And so we want to engage in this dialogue about what are the different options that we can do. So the Hayward Area Shoreline Protection Agency got a bunch of people in the room, civil engineers, flood control people. They got environmentalists that are really worried about habitat, and maybe some people in the room say, just flood all those areas, they should have never been in the first place. And through this dialogue, this concept of a horizontal levee emerged. And so maybe we'll advance to the next slide. And this is a view of it. But basically, it's a long, broad slope. And so, we can see here in this picture, we have the bay to the far left. We have tidal marsh, which we have plenty of. But basically, in this picture, the flood protection is typically set right here. And we keep armoring the coastline. And as sea level rises, we have to keep armoring that more and more. It becomes subject to more wave energy and becomes much more difficult to manage. And so this concept of the horizontal levee or the ecotone slope has emerged, where we put the sea or the flood protection upstream, and we protect it with this long, broad slope, and we feed it with fresh water and irrigate a bunch of vegetation that provides habitat to wildlife, and also becomes a very resilient piece of green infrastructure. So maybe we'll advance to the next slide. This is just another picture of it. So again, the freshwater on the far left is the flood control levee. There's a freshwater source, and we have this wet meadow concept in the upland. And back 500 years ago, this is what the bay edge used to look like. That freshwater used to come out of the foothills, come down and meander, and create this wet meadow concept. When we did modern flood control, we short-circuited all that. We took the flow right from the foothills and directed it right to the bay, and that way we didn't flood any of the places that we live. So this concept has gained a lot of traction in the environmental community because it restores a habitat that used to exist throughout the bay. So anyway, this is another picture of it, and we can index one more. This is a cross-section. What I think is important about this one is, as we pass this fresh water through the ecotone, and one opportunity that's available to Orloma and to all the wastewater treatment plants along the bay edge is right now we have this big pipeline that goes up to the Oakland airport, then goes 7 miles into the bay, and represents about a $500 million piece of infrastructure. And we look out 50 years from now and we think we're either going to replace it in its current state, or maybe we start doing something similar to this. And if we did, we could take the effluent that we have from our plant, which is very clean already, and further polish it through a concept like this. Or, this is not a must-have for Orloma or any of the East Bay agencies. It could be that we put stormwater in here. There's a lot of concern about the urban drool. The stormwater that comes off during the summer has got a lot of pesticides and other residual that we could route that flow and push it through a concept like this. So we pick up a water quality benefit to the bay as well. Maybe we'll go to the next slide. So I think I've touched on some of these, that we have a water quality component, that we're going to pick up habitat, that this is a resilient flood protection measure. And the thing that really gets a lot of people is it costs about half of what the equivalent armoring would be if we just did that along the bay edge. And so there's this kind of a triple win or quadruple win concept with it. So maybe we'll go to the next slide. This is, we're working with Alex Horn, who's a professor at UC Berkeley, and he builds big water treatment parks throughout the world. And he says he always wants, or he's always said, one benefit is if you make these things look like a park, people start getting a lot more on board with it. And I think that this concept fits into that mold. That this is what it might look like, that there would be a walking path on the actual flood, the flood levee. We have this freshwater source, and then we would connect to the bay. So this is a rendering. The city of San Jose is also working on a project similar to this. Maybe next slide. This is again, so at Orloma, we haven't proven this and no one's done it. So, within all the regulations, in order to connect a bit of water to the bay, you need to get a permit to do that. And because we don't know if this is going to work, we've designed this experiment in a box. And so, our portion that we're going to test is just inside this red box here. We're going to introduce our effluent, pass it subterranean through this flow, and we have 12 different experimental cells. So we're going to try different soil types, different vegetation, and we partner with UC Berkeley to really study what the water quality benefits are, the habitat, and whether this works. Right now this works great on paper, and oftentimes things work well in my office and don't work well in real life. So we're going to try this. So maybe next slide. So experimental goals, we're going to figure out, does this work? how effective is it improving water quality? There's concerns about trace pharmaceuticals and contaminants. We call them contaminants of emerging concern. That people that take birth control, for example, only a fraction of it gets taken up into your body. The rest of it passes out, and that goes out into the environment. This type of treatment becomes highly effective at uptaking those types of contaminants and breaking them down. And so we're going to measure and evaluate how good it is at doing that, and what is the benefit as far as habitat goes. So, I think I'm basically getting close to the close. I have a bunch of brochures for this project. We need a lot of friends on this project. We want people to be involved with it. We're going to do our little part of this, but the vision is that this will be extended throughout the entire East Bay. And that's subject to everyone in this room's approval and really looking at the data as it comes out. And we need to evaluate as a society whether this is the proper response for the East Bay. And so I would encourage you to learn about the project. I brought a bunch of literature so you can study it and learn more about it. And we're also we've partnered with Save the Bay. We're now growing 70,000 native plants. We're inviting the community to come out and transplant those plants from the existing nursery beds into the Ecotone. You can come onto the treatment plant site, see what this project is all about, and be a part of planting it and kind of kicking the tires for yourself. So we certainly will invite you to that. I think it's both an invitation in your newsletter, and then you can call down to the office and get on a call list for that. And maybe with the last slide, this is a kind of a rendering of both the equalization basin in the background and what the Ecotone slope will look like forward. So that's what I came to share. I'm happy to answer questions or take on questions.
Yes, I do have a question. When are you going to begin doing the planting?